In 1926, in her first big role on Broadway, Mae West wrote, directed, produced, and starred in a play so controversial, conservative critics denounced it and religious groups protested. Despite this, it was wildly successful until it all came to a disturbing turning point. The full story is coming up. From the earliest possible moment, Mae West craved fame. She started acting when she was just 5 years old, and diva behavior followed soon after. By the time she hit the third grade, West's quest for fame already had her dropping out of school. She entered an amateur vaudeville show and called herself Baby May. Considering she was a full-time paid performer before she even hit her teens, it's no surprise she grew up fast in other ways too. West claimed that she was determined to lose her virginity before puberty so she wouldn't have to worry about getting pregnant. She said that she seduced her 21-year-old music teacher when she was 13 and told him that it was no big deal because she'd already done it before. By the time she was 17, Mae West was established in the vaudeville circuit, and already she was extremely hard to impress. But when a young man named Frank Wallace began to consistently get more applause than her, she noticed. He proposed that they put on an act together, and she agreed. West was not interested in mixing business with pleasure. She'd reject Frank's advances every night after the show, but late one night, West gave him the surprise of a lifetime. She jumped into his arms, and he responded ecstatically. Mae West and Frank Wallace fell deeply in love on their 10-week tour, or at least Wallace did. Finally, in 1911, West told Wallace she'd marry him. They eloped in Milwaukee, but while Wallace hoped for a happy ending, he was in for something else entirely. It appears that the very act of marriage snuffed out any romantic feelings Mae had for Wallace, and according to her, she got a separate hotel room on their very first night as man and wife. According to Wallace, West would depart their room at midnight and lock him in, only returning after 3 a.m. He heard from fellow vaudevillians that she was going on dates with locals. When Wallace confronted her, it didn't exactly go as planned. West simply laughed and told him that she didn't think she was doing anything wrong and that it was all innocent fun. Wallace was so obsessed with her that he didn't want to rock the boat and lose her. On top of that, she was hiding a secret. West never told her family about the marriage, and she didn't want to. When they returned to New York, she told him that they both had to keep it a secret and live separately. Wallace likely thought that the arrangement was temporary. He was so wrong. West left Wallace high and dry and threw herself into her vaudeville career. As a solo artist, she solidified her look and act, taking large doses of inspiration from the best female impersonators of the era. In fact, the reference was so heavy-handed that some people whispered that Mae West herself must actually be a man under all the costumes and makeup. It wouldn't be the last time that West sparked these kinds of salacious rumors, as we'll see. Collaboration is key in vaudeville, but Mae West was a trailblazer ahead of her time, which meant there was a lack of willing writers and musicians for her to work with. Well, that was no problem for Mae. It didn't really matter who was on stage with her. After all, West knew she would always steal the show. Even though she'd ended their relationship, West's estranged husband, Frank Wallace, came crawling back. She begged him for an annulment, and when that didn't work, she tried the opposite strategy. West asked him to buy her a home. However, when she went to the bank with him and realized that he had mere pennies in savings, she told him, "You need this more than I do." It was over for real, and Wallace knew it. Yet neither sought to legally end the marriage. As we'll see, it will be a decision that came back to haunt them. Mae West very clearly took a cavalier approach to romance, but she later admitted that one Italian lover made a large enough dent in her armor that she finally experienced her first heartbreak. In her memoir, she called him Mr. D, but showbiz historians have put together that this was most likely vaudeville performer Guido Dero. Even though she fell hard, she found it impossible to quit her promiscuous lifestyle cold turkey, and that wasn't their only problem. Dero became increasingly jealous as the days passed, and she began to fear he'd attack one of her many suitors. On top of that, he asked her to marry him, but as we all know, she couldn't, as she was still technically married to Frank Wallace. He had a dark secret of his own. Dero was also married. West couldn't say no to him despite her claims that she never got involved with married men, which is likely why she didn't use his real name when writing about him. Their mutual marital situations couldn't stop their passionate affair, but a sad tragedy could. According to documentarians, despite all the precautions West regularly took, she became pregnant with Dero's child. West knew that she was too self-involved for a husband, let alone a child, and she made the decision to undergo an abortion. Doctors botched the procedure, and it not only cost West her fertility, but also nearly killed her. Upon hearing about what happened, a heartbroken Dero finally ended their relationship. West swallowed her own heartbreak, but of course, she didn't stay single for long. Mae West's dalliances with fellow vaudeville performers hadn't exactly ended well, but it was hard for her to connect with someone who didn't share her passion. Enter James Timoney, a man 9 years older than her. He may not have been in showbiz when she met him, but soon enough, he'd be in the Mae West business. Despite being a successful lawyer, when Timoney became involved with West, he basically dropped everything to devote his whole life to managing her career. Normally, this kind of proximity would send West running for the hills, but not this time. Timoney believed in her in a way that no one else had, except herself, of course. Timoney's unerring support was just what she needed, and considering the trouble she got into next, his legal expertise couldn't have hurt either. One day, while driving by the waterfront, Mae West was struck by the sight of two sailors procuring the services of a woman, and it inspired a scandalous idea that would change the course of her life. West began writing a play under her pen name Jane Mast, about the adventures of a sex worker with a heart of gold, of course, named Margie. Shockingly, Mae decided to call the play Sex. It was her first time starring in a Broadway production. Her confidence carried her, but so did word of mouth. Word had spread and sailors had lined up around the block to catch the show. Despite negative reviews, audiences filled the aisles to see the most controversial show of the year, and then the backlash began. Newspapers wrote editorials about the moral outrage they felt over the play, but the worst was yet to come. One night, officers burst into the theater and detained West and several other performers. West was a shrewd businesswoman. She was more than ready to work the raid to her advantage. And that's exactly what she did. West spent the night in a women's prison and the next day got her boyfriend, James Timoney, to file an injunction against any interference with the show. The next night, when officers showed up, West proudly brandished the restraining order against them. They charged her with maintaining a public nuisance and producing an immoral show. For each court appearance, Mae West draped herself in black satin and furs, and then showed up to innocently declare that her play had no nudity or profanity, making it one of the cleanest shows on Broadway. Unfortunately, the jury found her guilty of producing an immoral play. The court ordered Mae West to serve 10 days in jail and pay a $500 fine. West said that $500 for that kind of publicity was basically a bargain. West also claimed that the warden had let her keep her silk panties instead of the standard issue cotton offerings. West even said that the warden took her riding in the evenings. They released her 8 days into her 10-day sentence for good behavior, naturally. Despite the dramatic interruption, West wrote a new play that she thought might be even more controversial. She called it The Drag. It was inspired by the gay men and drag queens she'd met in showbiz. While they never took it to Broadway, it was a huge success during its run in Connecticut and New Jersey. For once, West didn't write herself in as the star and let the subjects of the play take center stage. Name any superstar: Rita Hayworth, Elizabeth Taylor, and at one point, West had insulted them or insinuated they weren't anything special. There was one surprising exception to the rule. West did reserve a modicum of respect for one star, Marilyn Monroe, who she said had something, before adding that, of course, she copied me. I mean, she was probably right. In the eyes of critics, most of West's plays were flops, but that didn't really matter to West. People filled the seats each night expecting racy plots and risque jokes, and that's just what West gave them. In just 5 years, May had gone from Broadway newbie to one of the most notorious stars, but then everything changed overnight. As the effects of the Great Depression worsened, Mae West had been successful enough to mostly be sheltered from it all at first. Broadway and vaudeville, on the other hand, were limiting their offerings thanks to dwindling audiences, leaving West with nowhere to perform, a dire consequence for someone like her. Luckily, on the other side of the country, a new possibility beckoned. But could Hollywood accept a woman on the verge of her 40s? Best known for antics many would consider too wild for the screen? George Raft, a former driver for a mob figure who'd been a friend of West's, was now an up-and-coming Hollywood actor. When the studio gave him his own star vehicle, he suggested West for a part. Paramount hired Mae West on a 2-year contract with a hefty salary. In her first film appearance, she injected her own personality and style into the part and totally stole the show. The transition from Broadway to Hollywood was both brief and now complete. And luckily for West, the studio needed her more than she needed them. The Great Depression had gotten to them as well, and her first picture became a life-saving hit for Paramount. Mae West wanted to bring one of her best-known stage characters, Diamond Lil, to the screen. She got her wish, and Diamond Lil became She Done Him Wrong's Lady Lou. Not only did West encourage Paramount to cast a then unknown Cary Grant as her co-star, she also insisted that a black actor be added to the cast. It was a gamble, but it paid off. The film was a huge success and won Best Picture at the Oscars. Mae West wasn't shy when it came to talking to the press about her romantic conquests, but there was one subject that was off limits, until journalists unearthed her secret marriage to Frank Wallace in 1935. West denied it, but Wallace went to court to get them to recognize the marriage. The tabloids went into an uproar, and when the battle looked like it might not work in her favor, West was uncharacteristically silent. After years in court, West finally ditched Wallace for good, paying him off. If she wasn't already sour on marriage before, this did it. Mae West ended her romantic relationship with James Timoney in the mid-1930s, but they remained close friends and associates. When Timoney died in 1951, West was heartbroken. Timoney had exhibited unwavering faith in her and echoed her belief that she was the star in Hollywood most worthy of fame. It was a devastating loss. Mae West had fought against multiple acts of censorship as a Broadway star, but they were nothing compared to what she faced in Hollywood. Studios found it hard to place her in any film, especially knowing she likely was to go off script to make her characters even saucier. It frustrated West to have opportunities snatched from her at the moment where she'd been one of Hollywood's biggest stars. So Mae West set her sights on Sin City itself. Around this time, Mae West came up with a novel idea. Long before Chippendales or Magic Mike, West recruited a slew of bodybuilders to join her on stage as she sang in her Vegas act. As she said, she enjoyed looking at male bodies so much, and she hoped her female audience would too. It's no surprise that she soon began calling some of her co-stars to her hotel room at night, but no one actually expected her to fall in love. West feuded with some of her bodybuilder co-stars and slept with others, but one stood out from the pack. Chester Rubinski, a name he later changed to Paul Novak, was 31, which meant that he was 30 years younger than Mae West. Their passionate romance had a dramatic start. At the time, the top-billed guy in West's show was the reigning Mr. Universe. Hardigay soon got together with blonde bombshell Jane Mansfield, and the trio traded barbs in the papers, with West belittling the couple and them calling her old and insinuating she was jealous. Finally, when another Mr. Universe was crowned, West invited some press to the hotel to talk about how she'd now shuffle Hardigay to the back of the pile. He burst into West's room to defend his good name, only for Novak to see him approach West and pop him in the nose. During the chaos, someone knocked West to the floor. She yelled, and it went all the way to court. Novak claimed self-defense, but as always, Mae West came out on top. The publicity made it look like two younger men were fighting over her, and Novak was a great pick for a new paramour. He supported her and believed in her unconditionally, just as James Timoney had before his passing. Novak was also undeniably a positive influence on Mae West. They went swimming together, and he encouraged her to give up sweets and cooked healthy meals for her. But they also shared a bizarre fascination with the supernatural. For a time, they hosted a man who claimed to be a psychic. By 1970, it had been 27 long years since Mae West had appeared on film. Some would have given up on Hollywood, but not West. She made her long-awaited comeback playing a female impersonator in Myra Breckenridge. The production was a disaster, but there was an unexpected side effect. Younger audiences caught on to her campy appeal and praised her for pushing back against censorship. Mae West's swan song was the campy and bizarre sextet, for which she served as screenwriter and star despite her advancing age. A young Timothy Dalton played her husband, and figures as diverse as Alice Cooper, Regis Philbin, and Ringo Starr took up other roles. It was a bit more of an adventure than she intended it to be, though. West was 85 when she made Sextet. After last-minute script changes, West had to wear an earpiece so that the director could feed her her lines. On top of that, her hearing was so bad that she didn't hear him yell "cut" during a scene filmed partly in an elevator, and so she accidentally stayed in the elevator for half an hour afterward. Despite being completely iconic, West's last Hollywood stand was a total box office flop. In her final years, Novak took great care of West. He once said, "I believe I was put on this earth to take care of Mae West." And that was exactly what he did. On November 22, 1980, Mae West died in her home with her beloved partner and a handful of her closest friends by her side. West's loved ones held a small private funeral service, but lest we forget, Mae West was the queen of controversy, and over the years she had faced some absolutely jaw-dropping accusations. As the obituaries and memorials rolled in after her passing, so did the retellings of the most scandalous rumors about her. Despite her reputation in the bedroom, it was rumored that she was actually frigid. It was also rumored that she possessed both male and female genitals, had undergone the world's first gender reassignment operation, that she was actually a virgin, and that she was a man in drag. These scandalous stories did exactly what Mae West intended. They not only cemented her position as someone who lived outside of the prudish societal norms of her time, they also propelled her status as the absolute legend that we know her as today, nearly 100 years on. Thank you for watching this video. Please like and subscribe for more fascinating content.